I've always felt like a shadow in my own life, flickering faintly at the edges of everything while everyone else shone brightly. My name is Ellie Harper, Ellie, to anyone who bothered remembering. I lived in a small coastal town called Rockport, Maine, where the air smelled of salt water and secrets. The kind of place where people smiled politely but whispered behind closed doors. My family owned Harper's Book Nook, a quaint little bookstore that had been in our family for generations. It wasn't much, but it was mine, or so I thought. Growing up, I learned quickly that being a Harper didn't mean you belonged. It meant you fit neatly into whatever mold my mother, Margaret, carved out for us. She was the queen of appearances, obsessed with maintaining the illusion of perfection. Dad, Nathaniel, rarely spoke unless it involved money or status. And then there was Lila, my younger sister, the golden child, whose every word dripped with charm and manipulation. I was the afterthought, the quiet one who blended into the wallpaper. But none of that mattered back then, because I still believed I could earn their love. How naive I was. If you asked me what my childhood was like, I'd tell you it was a series of moments where I tried and failed to prove myself worthy. There was a time when I won second place in a statewide essay competition. When I showed Mom the trophy, she barely glanced at it before saying, "Imagine how proud we'd be if it were first." Then there was the summer I worked overtime at the bookstore to help pay off some overdue bills. Instead of gratitude, all I got was criticism about how slow sales were under my watch. Even now, as an adult, nothing changed. Every family dinner felt like walking onto a stage without lines, knowing full well the audience wouldn't clap for you anyway. But what hurt most wasn't the neglect, it was the way they treated the bookstore. That tiny shop wasn't just bricks and books to me, it was home, history, heart. Yet to them, it was nothing more than another asset to exploit. One evening, as I cleared plates in the dining room, I overheard Mom talking on the phone. Her voice carried through the hallway, sharp and cold. "Sell it next month," she said. "No sense keeping something that doesn't make enough profit." My chest tightened. They were planning to sell my bookstore, the one thing that gave me purpose, and they hadn't even told me. Betrayal burned like acid in my throat. The final straw came during one of those dreaded family dinners. The table was set perfectly, as always. Polished silverware, crystal glasses, and dishes lined up like soldiers ready for inspection. We sat in silence until Mom broke it with her usual critique. "Ellie, honestly, when are you going to stop wasting your life working at that dusty old shop? You're nearly 30, and you have nothing to show for yourself." Her words stung, but not as much as the dismissive tone. Before I could respond, she added, "You're lucky we let you stay here this long. Maybe it's time you found somewhere else to go." Something inside me snapped. All the years of biting my tongue, swallowing my pride, pretending their words didn't cut deep, they all came rushing back. "Fine," I spat, standing abruptly. "If that's how you feel, I'll leave right now." No one stopped me. Not Dad, buried in his newspaper. Not Lila, scrolling through her phone with disinterest. Not even Mom, whose lips curled into a smug smile. I stormed upstairs, packed a duffel bag with clothes and a few keepsakes, and walked out the door. As I drove away from the house that night, tears streaming down my face, I swore I'd never look back. Little did I know, fate had other plans. Leaving Rockport felt like shedding a layer of skin I didn't realize I needed. I ended up in Boston, renting a cramped studio apartment above a noisy bar. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I woke up without the weight of expectations pressing down on me. I took odd jobs to scrape by, waitressing at a cafe, tutoring high school kids, even dog walking. Each day brought its own challenges, but also a strange sense of freedom. One afternoon, while serving coffee at the cafe, I met James Calloway. He was tall, with messy brown hair and a notebook perpetually tucked under his arm. "You're new around here," he remarked casually as I refilled his cup. I shrugged, not wanting to elaborate, but James had a way of drawing people out. Over weeks of casual chats, he revealed he was a journalist investigating corruption among wealthy families. His curiosity about my past grew, especially when I accidentally mentioned my family's name. "Harper," he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That rings a bell." I brushed it off, but his interest planted a seed in my mind. What if someone finally exposed the truth about them? It started innocently enough, a box of old letters from Grandma Harper that I'd saved. Flipping through them one lonely evening, I noticed recurring references to offshore accounts and business partners abroad. At first, I dismissed it as paranoia, but something nagged at me. So, I did what any curious millennial would do. I Googled. What I found made my blood run cold. Articles surfaced linking my father's company to offshore tax evasion schemes. Names I recognized from family gatherings appeared alongside allegations of fraud and exploitation. The pieces clicked together like a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. Anger bubbled inside me, not just for myself, but for everyone my family had hurt along the way. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice. James listened intently as I poured out everything I'd discovered. "This is huge, Ellie," he said, leaning forward. "But going after your family won't be easy. Are you sure you're ready for this?" I hesitated. Could I really take on the people who raised me? Who shaped me, however flawed they were? But then I thought about all the times I'd been silenced, ignored, pushed aside. About the bookstore they wanted to sell, the dreams they crushed without a second thought. "I'm done letting them win," I declared firmly. From that moment on, James became my ally. Together, we pieced together evidence, tracked down former employees, and dug deeper into the web of lies surrounding the Harper name. Every step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Returning to Rockport was harder than I expected. The familiar streets stirred memories I'd rather forget. I told myself I was only visiting Grandma Harper, who'd fallen ill. But in reality, I had ulterior motives. While she napped, I snuck into the attic, searching for documents that might bolster our case. Of course, things didn't go smoothly. Lila caught me rifling through boxes. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded, crossing her arms. When I explained, she laughed bitterly. "You think anyone cares about your little crusade? They'll destroy you before you get close." Her words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. If Lila thought I'd back down, she didn't know me at all. After my run-in with Lila, I knew I couldn't do this alone. James and I started reaching out to former employees of Harper Enterprises, people who had been wrongfully fired, underpaid, or pushed aside when they tried to speak up. It wasn't easy. Most were hesitant to talk, afraid of retaliation. But eventually, we found a few brave souls willing to share their stories. One of them was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who used to manage the accounting department before being let go under suspicious circumstances. Over tea in her tiny apartment, she handed me a folder filled with photocopies of financial records. "Your father thought no one would notice," she said bitterly. "But I kept copies, just in case." Her courage gave me strength. These weren't just numbers on paper, they were proof of the corruption that had poisoned my family for years. With each new ally, I felt less like the forgotten daughter and more like someone fighting for something bigger than myself. Not everyone stayed loyal. One of our key informants, a man named Greg, suddenly backed out after meeting privately with Nathaniel. When I confronted him, he avoided my gaze. "I'm sorry, Ellie," he muttered. "They offered me money. Enough to start over somewhere else." His betrayal hit hard, not because I trusted him completely, but because it reminded me how far my family would go to protect their secrets. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall as tears streamed down my face. Was I foolish to think I could take them down? To believe I could expose decades of wrongdoing without losing everything? James found me like that, curled into myself, defeated. He didn't say much, just sat beside me and let me cry. "You're stronger than you think, Ellie," he said softly. "Don't let them win." Somehow, his words reignited the fire inside me. If Greg wanted to walk away, fine. But I wouldn't stop, not until the truth came out. The investigation wasn't cheap. Between travel expenses, legal consultations, and bribing sources for information, my savings dwindled quickly. Selling my car was the hardest part. It wasn't much, but it was freedom on wheels. Watching it drive away felt like another piece of me slipping through my fingers. James noticed the toll it was taking. "You don't have to do this alone," he insisted one evening as we pored over documents in his cramped apartment. "Let me help." At first, I refused. I didn't want to drag him deeper into this mess. But when his editor threatened to shut down the story due to pressure from powerful figures tied to my family, James stood his ground. "If they think I'll back down, they're dead wrong," he told me firmly. Seeing his determination made me realize I wasn't fighting alone anymore. We were in this together, come what may. Things escalated quickly after we obtained a recording of Nathaniel admitting to illegal activities during a private meeting. It wasn't easy getting it. One of James's contacts risked their job sneaking a hidden microphone into the room. The audio was grainy, but clear enough to hear my father discussing offshore accounts and bribes with a business partner. Listening to his voice sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the distant, aloof man I grew up with. It was someone cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. Knowing we finally had irrefutable evidence should have filled me with triumph, but instead it left me hollow. This was the man who was supposed to love me, protect me, yet here he was, destroying lives, including mine, for profit. Still, there was no turning back now. Armed with the recording, we prepared to make our move. Little did we know, danger lurked closer than we realized. We should have seen it coming. After weeks of operating under the radar, James and I got careless. Late one night, as we left a diner where we'd been reviewing evidence, two men stepped out of the shadows. Before we could react, they grabbed us, shoving us into a waiting van. Panic surged through me as the door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. "Who sent you?" James demanded, his voice steady despite the situation. No answer came, only the sound of tires screeching against pavement. They drove us to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, where we were forced to sit at a table while a masked figure played the recording we'd worked so hard to obtain. "Where did you get this?" he growled, slamming his fist on the table. My heart pounded as I glanced at James, silently pleading for a way out. Somehow we managed to escape, thanks to a distraction caused by a stray cat knocking over a stack of crates. Bruised and shaken, we fled into the night, clutching the evidence tighter than ever. Knowing my sister might be involved not at me, I decided to confront her directly, hoping to appeal to whatever shred of decency she might still possess. I met her at a cafe in Rockport, choosing neutral ground. She looked immaculate as always, her blonde hair styled perfectly, her designer clothes screaming privilege. "Why are you really here, Ellie?" she asked coolly after ordering a latte. I slid a copy of the recording across the table. "Because you know what they've done. And maybe, just maybe, you can still choose to do the right thing." For a moment, she hesitated, her mask slipping. Then she leaned forward, her voice low and venomous. "You have no idea what you're messing with. If you keep going, they'll ruin you. Is that what you want?" Her warning chilled me, but it also solidified my resolve. Lila wasn't going to help, and deep down, I hadn't expected her to. With time running out, James and I decided to leak parts of the evidence online. Using anonymous accounts, we shared snippets of the recording and financial documents with journalists and social media platforms. The response was immediate and explosive. Headlines screamed about the Harper scandal, and public outrage spread like wildfire. Watching the fallout unfold felt surreal. Reporters camped outside our old house, neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and Margaret's carefully curated image crumbled overnight. For the first time, I saw cracks in her composure, a flicker of fear in her eyes as cameras flashed in her face. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and heartbreaking all at once. As much as I hated what my family had done, seeing them fall apart was harder than I anticipated. The tension within the Harper household reached a boiling point. During a heated argument captured by paparazzi lurking outside, Margaret accused Nathaniel of ruining everything with his greed. "This is your fault," she shrieked, slapping him across the face. He retaliated, shouting about her reckless spending and poor decisions. Meanwhile, Lila disappeared entirely, fleeing town without a word to anyone. It was chaos, ugly and raw. Part of me wanted to step in, to stop the destruction I'd set in motion. But another part, the part that had been silenced and cast aside for so long, whispered, "They deserve this." Still, guilt lingered like a shadow, reminding me that revenge came at a cost. Armed with a full recording and stacks of incriminating documents, I returned to Rockport one last time. This time, I didn't sneak around. I marched straight into the house, reporters trailing behind me like a Greek chorus. Margaret and Nathaniel stared at me in shock as I laid out every detail of their crimes in front of the cameras. "You took everything from me," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "My dignity, my dreams, my home. But you won't take the truth." Margaret tried to deflect, calling me jealous and unstable, but the evidence spoke louder than her lies. By the end of the confrontation, authorities had arrived to arrest Nathaniel, while Margaret collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. It was over, or so I thought. In the days that followed, the Harper empire unraveled completely. Assets were frozen, lawsuits piled up, and the once revered family name became synonymous with scandal. Nathaniel faced multiple charges, while Margaret retreated from public life entirely. Lila remained missing, her absence a haunting reminder of the fractures within our family. But justice isn't always clean or satisfying. As the dust settled, I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. Relief, anger, sadness, all swirled together in a confusing mess. Had I won? Or had I simply traded one kind of pain for another? The aftermath of the scandal left me emotionally drained, but one bright spot emerged: my relationship with Grandma Harper. She had always been the quiet backbone of our family, overshadowed by Margaret's domineering presence. After everything came to light, she reached out to me, her voice trembling over the phone. "Ellie, I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have done more to protect you when you were younger." Hearing those words brought tears to my eyes, not just because of the apology, but because it was the first time someone in my family acknowledged my pain. When I visited her, we spent hours talking, sharing stories, and piecing together fragments of our shared history. Together, we decided to reopen Harper's book nook, not as a relic of the past, but as a symbol of renewal. It would be a place where people could gather, learn, and heal. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. James played a pivotal role in helping me navigate the emotional fallout. His exposé on the Harper scandal became a national sensation, earning him accolades and opportunities he hadn't anticipated. Yet despite his rising fame, he remained steadfastly by my side. One evening, as we sat on the steps of the bookstore watching the sunset, he turned to me and said, "You've changed me, Ellie. You've reminded me why I wanted to be a journalist in the first place, to fight for truth and justice." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Our partnership had started as a practical alliance, but over time, it had grown into something deeper. Though neither of us said the words outright, it was clear that what we shared went beyond friendship. As the town slowly embraced the revamped bookstore, James and I began dreaming of a future together, one built on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Late at night, when the world grew still, I often found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The journey from being the forgotten daughter to becoming the woman who exposed her family's darkest secrets wasn't one I'd ever imagined taking. There were moments when I questioned whether it was worth it, the sleepless nights, the betrayals, the heartache. But then I'd look around at the life I was building and realize that every sacrifice had led me here. One thing stood out above all else. I wasn't the same person who'd walked out of that house months ago. I discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, resilience born from standing up for what was right. And though forgiveness didn't come easily, especially toward my parents, I learned that letting go of bitterness was as much for my own sake as theirs. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of their mistakes. The bookstore reopened on a crisp autumn morning, its shelves stocked with books donated by the community. Neighbors streamed in, eager to support the new chapter of Harper's Book Nook. I stood behind the counter, greeting customers with a smile I hadn't worn in years. Kids gathered in the reading nook, flipping through picture books, while adults browsed the fiction section. To honor Grandma Harper's legacy, we created a special corner dedicated to local authors and aspiring writers. Every Saturday, I hosted workshops where young voices could share their stories. Seeing their faces light up with excitement reminded me of why I love this place so much. It wasn't just about selling books. It was about fostering connection and creativity. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. Years later, Lila finally resurfaced. She showed up unannounced one rainy afternoon, drenched and hesitant, standing outside the bookstore like a ghost from my past. At first, I considered turning her away. What could she possibly say to make amends for everything she'd done? But something in her expression, a mixture of guilt and vulnerability, stopped me. We talked for hours, hashing out old wounds and uncovering truths neither of us had dared to face before. She admitted she'd been jealous of me growing up, resentful of the way Mom favored her while ignoring my needs. "I thought if I played along, maybe they'd love me more," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "But all I did was lose myself." Though I couldn't forgive her completely, not yet, I agreed to start fresh. Healing wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, some bridges could still be rebuilt. As the years passed, I wrote a memoir chronicling my journey from the shadowy corners of my childhood to the spotlight of exposing my family's crimes. Titled Kicked Out and Forgotten, it became both a cathartic release and a call to action for others facing similar struggles. Readers connected deeply with my story, finding solace in the message that even the most broken paths can lead to redemption. Through speaking engagements and interviews, I advocated for transparency and accountability, urging communities to stand against corruption in all its forms. The scars of my past would always remain, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as reminders of how far I'd come and how much further I could go. Looking back, I realized the hardest battles are often the ones we fight within ourselves. Standing up to my family taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Forgiveness isn't about excusing wrongdoing, it's about freeing yourself from the chains of resentment. And love isn't something you wait for, it's something you create, nurture, and choose every single day. These lessons weren't easy to learn, but they shaped me into the person I am today. Someone who believes in the power of truth, the beauty of second chances, and the importance of staying true to oneself. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this. No matter how dark the night, dawn will always break. Keep fighting. Keep hoping. Keep believing. On a sunny spring morning, I sat in the bookstore surrounded by friends, neighbors, and supporters. James leaned against the doorway, grinning as he watched me interact with customers. Kids laughed in the background, their voices blending with the rustle of pages turning. Outside, the sign above the door read, "Harper's Book Nook, where stories come alive." For so long, I'd searched for a place to belong. Now, I realized I'd found it, not in a house or a name, but in the connections I'd forged and the life I'd built. As I glanced around the room, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but I was ready to face whatever came next, with hope in my heart and truth on my side. And for the first time in my life, I believed I deserved it.